So, if you grew up in a multilingual country like India, you've probably wondered about the unique way we all speak English. I mean, is it right? Is it wrong? Or is it maybe something else entirely? Well, let's dive in and figure it out. Okay, check this out. This is something a real 6-year-old kid in Chennai actually said. He's hopping between Malayalam and English, saying something like, "Before school, I had tea, I ate 2 idlis. No, wait, I ate 1 idli and left one behind." It's a pretty fascinating linguistic puzzle, isn't it?
And that really gets to the heart of it, right? Is a sentence like that just wrong, or does it show us something much, much deeper about how language actually works in the real world? To answer that, we've got to zoom out a bit.
All right, section 1, a linguistic melting pot. See, to really get what that little boy was doing, we have to understand that languages aren't these neat, separate things we keep in boxes. Nope, they're constantly bumping into each other, mixing, borrowing, and changing.
Here's the key idea. Languages aren't like rigid rule books. They're much more like living things. They're fluid, they're elastic, and they're always absorbing new stuff to adapt. So that kid's sentence wasn't an error, it was a perfect example of this natural blending in action. It's not a mistake, it's evolution.
Okay, let's get specific and look at one feature of this blending, something called reduplication. It's when you repeat a word to add emphasis, a common feature in many Indian languages, but not really in standard English. You know, like saying dire dire for slowly slowly. And of course, you can see exactly how that feature gets carried over into English. We've all heard someone say something like, "She is walking slowly slowly." Now, this isn't a mistake. It's a person taking a grammar rule they already know from one language and applying it to another to add that extra layer of meaning.
All right, section 2, the classroom language wars. So this natural blending is how language works out in the real world, on the street. But what happens when it walks into a classroom? Well, that's where you often see this huge clash between how society works and what schools expect.
On one side, you have this perspective from a school principal. She's pleading for empathy here, asking parents to see these language differences not as a problem, but as a chance for kids to actually teach each other. It's a really powerful call for inclusion.
But then you have this completely competing view. You have a teacher who's basically saying that in today's world, English is everything. You're just out of the race without it. From this point of view, regional languages are seen as a waste of time, something that actually holds students back. And here's that conflict, right here in a nutshell. Out in the real world, multilingualism is normal. We mix languages all the time, but in school, the expectation is often monolingualism, one language only, where using a regional language might even be forbidden. You can just imagine the tension that creates for students.
Section 3, 3 language learning myths. You know, a lot of this tension in the classroom comes from some really deep-seated myths about how we learn languages in the first place. So let's go ahead and bust a few of them.
Okay, myth number 1. The idea that you absolutely have to start young. We've all heard about the so-called critical period. But you know what? The research shows that's not the whole story. What really matters is the quality of the language you're exposed to. An adult with really good, consistent exposure can learn just as well as a child.
All right, this next one is a huge one. The myth that your mother tongue is some kind of obstacle. The reality is the total opposite. Having a strong foundation in your first language is like having the blueprint for a house. It gives you the cognitive framework that makes building a second or third language on top of it so much easier. It's an asset, not a roadblock.
And the final myth we're going to tackle, the idea that to learn English really well, you should only be exposed to English. The truth is, our brains are literally built to be multilingual. It doesn't cause confusion. It's actually a fantastic workout for your brain that has tons of proven benefits. So let's move on to section 4, the story of Indian English. Now that we've busted those myths, we can start to look at Indian English in a completely new light. It's not just a collection of mistakes, but a unique dialect that evolved for very specific historical and social reasons.
You know, a key reason English became so important in India was because it was seen as neutral. I mean, think about it. In a country with hundreds of languages, if you made any single one the main official language, you'd give all of its native speakers a massive advantage. So English was chosen as this link language to try and level the playing field. And because of this special role, English in India started to develop its own distinct flavor. It picked up unique features, borrowing from local languages. We already talked about reduplication, but there's also phonetic changes, like that hard T sound in the word table, and even unique grammatical structures, like those classic tag questions we're about to see.
And this is the perfect example. We've all said this, or at least heard it a million times. That little no at the end is a direct transfer from phrases like acha hai na in Hindi. It's not an error, it's a feature. It's a hallmark of a distinct living dialect.
So this brings us to our final and honestly our most important section. Your English is not wrong. After everything we've talked about, it's time to reframe how we think about our own speech and just embrace it with some confidence.
If you take just one thing away from this whole explainer, please let it be this. The way many of us speak English isn't a wrong version of British or American English. It is simply a different, totally valid, and legitimate dialect in its own right.
I mean, just think about it. When millions upon millions of people speak a language in a consistent way with its own unique patterns, it stops being a foreign language. It becomes localized. It becomes Indianized. At this point, English is a fundamental part of India's linguistic ecology, just like any other language spoken there.
Now, of course, this doesn't mean we shouldn't want to improve or become more fluent, but the goal shouldn't be to erase our Indianness. If you want to get better at any language, there's one simple, undeniable mantra: the more high-quality input you get from reading, listening, watching, the better your output is going to be. Simple as that.
So let's end with this thought. Instead of asking yourself, is my English correct? Maybe try asking a different question. What does your unique way of speaking say about your history and your culture? Because that blend of sounds and phrases isn't a flaw that needs to be corrected. It's your own personal story, just waiting to be told.